As we gather here today to talk about African youth leadership with the goal of facilitating development and progress, it is no secret that we are lagging behind as a continent and as a society in sowing the seeds and harvesting the fruits of youth leadership. In the landscape of African leadership, culture has often downplayed the role and contribution of youth in running the economic, the political, and social apparatus of society. Youth have often been marginalized and cast in the sea of uncertainty. With no one coming to their rescue, they have drowned in the deep waters of poverty. They have drowned in unemployment. They have been overwhelmed by the high waves of diseases such as HIV and AIDS. They have been overwhelmed by waves of illiteracy, gender inequality, armed conflicts, and they have failed to navigate through the rapids of poverty. The youth in Africa remind me of that wee little man of short stature, overwhelmed by the tall crowds, and climbing the sycamore tree to catch a glimpse at greatness. In our society today, youth have to climb the sycamore tree to achieve empowerment. They have to climb the sycamore tree for their voices to be heard. When are youth going to be asked to climb down the sycamore tree? When are they going to be asked? When we talk about African youth leadership as a path towards progress, we are referring to the quintessential process of transforming the raw and uncultivated talents among the youth into polished, creative minds. Transforming the raw and uncultivated talents into polished, creative minds. How do we define youth today? How do we define Africa's youth? According to the African Youth Charter, youth or young people are defined as individuals between the ages of 15 and 35 years. Other studies, however, define youth as falling in the 15 to 24 age bracket. Going back in times, traditional society had a unique format which involved engaging in various customs during times of major life transitions such as puberty, such as youth, adulthood, and elderly status. They performed and engaged in various customs. Arnold van Gennep was the first anthropologist to note the regularity of the rituals attached to transitional stages of life and coined the term the rites of passage. Such ritualized acknowledgement is becoming rare and extinct in modern society. Even in Africa today, it's becoming rare. In other words, there has always been ambiguity in the definition of youth. Why is youth leadership critical towards development and progress in Africa? Why is it critical? From a demographic standpoint, 60% of Africa's population is below 25 years. 60%. The median age is 20 years or less in Africa today. And with youth accounting for such a large segment of the population, it is imperative that they are engaged in the decision-making process and empowered to be part of the problem-solving fabric. Alex de Waal, a British writer and researcher, wrote that youth represent the possibility of either an exit from Africa's current predicament or an intensification of that predicament. That youth represent the possibility of either an exit from Africa's current predicament or an intensification of that predicament. In other words, the challenges Africa faces today require the qualities of youth, the energy, the predominance of courage, the dynamic nature, the creativity, the quality of imagination that has over the years sparked social change. When I think about the importance of youth leadership in Africa today, several themes come to my mind. I think about HIV and AIDS. I think about gender inequalities. I think about poverty and unemployment. I think about civil conflict. I think about migration pertaining to brain drain. I think about terrorism and genocide. And I think about population growth. I'll briefly explore some of these themes. But first is the battle against HIV. A pandemic that is wiping out millions of youth and impacting the social and economic fabric of Africa. HIV and AIDS. And this is particularly wiping out sub-Saharan Africa. Over 30 million people are infected, with 50% of the cases occurring among youth aged 15 to 24. The financial demands of HIV have broken families. They have left over 4 million orphans and created a dent on the labor force. Youth are currently the most affected by HIV and therefore have to be part of the solution. Youth-led initiatives towards reducing risky behavior and peer education have proven to be very effective, in addition to the most well-known ABC campaign, ABC standing for abstinence, being faithful, and use of condoms. The ABC campaign has been successful. There is still plenty of work to be done, ladies and gentlemen, on the local front, and also tapping the resources, the knowledge base and networking capacity of youth in the diaspora. Youth have to be at the forefront, not only regarding HIV and AIDS, but also the charge towards improving overall health care of young Africans, including access to safe drinking water, access to affordable health care, affordable drugs, better nutrition, and expanding preventive health care programs. Youth have to be at the forefront. Secondly, youth leadership is critical towards gender equality and empowerment. Gender inequality, though often overlooked, has been one of the major contributing factors to the spread of HIV in young girls. They are often powerless when it comes to their own sexuality, resulting into proneness to sexual exploitation and abuse. On the economic front, studies conducted by the International Labour Organization also demonstrate that unemployment rates are higher in women across the board. The combination of poverty and disease is placing a great burden on women and needs to be addressed into the policy framework of youth development initiatives. It is placing a great burden on women. Thirdly, we can't ignore the extent of the intellectual capital flight, what is commonly known as brain drain. Youth have a right to search for greener pastures in any part of the world. They have the right. However, this phenomenon has resulted into the one-way flock of intellectual capital to the Western world. We have thousands of talented students and youth living in the diaspora today, and it is no secret that brain drain is crippling many sectors of African nations, such as education, healthcare, and social services. African countries spend an estimated $4 billion every year to employ over 100,000 foreign expatriates. As we focus on youth leadership, there is a dire need to explore means of tapping the skills and resources of youth in the diaspora, while at the same time demand that our nations create an environment conducive to retaining and attracting youth to return. Brain drain is hurting Africa. However, ladies and gentlemen, without a conducive environment to prosper, Africa is also hurting from having brains in the drain. Without a conducive environment to prosper, Africa is hurting from having brains in the drain. As we focus on the battle to engage youth, I believe it is imperative that we wage this battle on two fronts, which I classify as the internal front and the external front. The internal front involves establishing a framework or an infrastructure within the existing apparatus. This initiative has to be facilitated by the leadership establishments, such as governments and also regional organizations. Some of the remedies we should consider include, first, inclusive youth participation, by making it a requirement to have youth position or representatives within the executive and legislative branches of government. Having youth positions and representatives within these branches of government. Secondly, funding and creating programs that promote peer education, which has demonstrated great success in fighting HIV. Thirdly, through promoting and providing universal primary education, focusing not only at increasing access, but also improving the quality of education. And finally, enforcing laws that are already in place to eliminate gender inequalities and introducing additional legislation that empowers and engages young people. The African Union, for instance, has made significant steps in empowering youth through the African Youth Charter. This charter provides a model and political framework for youth development, recognizing youth as partners towards peace, prosperity, and sustainable development. To give you a brief overview of some of the provisions in this charter, look at Article 2. It emphasizes non-discrimination. Highlighted in this provision is the notion that no privilege shall be attached to one's race, ethnicity, gender, language, or one's religion, etc. Article 3 emphasizes freedom of movement. Article 4 emphasizes freedom of expression, the right to express and disseminate one's ideas and opinions freely, and the freedom to seek and receive information. In Article 11, youth participation in all spheres and at all levels of government is guaranteed under this provision, in addition to prioritizing policies and programs of youth advocacy among marginalized youth. And finally, in Article 12, it emphasizes national youth policies. This provision requires member states to develop comprehensive national youth policies. Overall, ladies and gentlemen, this charter covers a wide range of issues that could foster the role of youth in our society. At the national level, several countries have also initiated attempts to develop national youth policies. It is my hope that we take this initiative seriously as a continent and use it as a springboard towards empowering youth.